Hello everybody, Ellie here for WhoCulture, and we made it to season 1 and Space Babies. How excited was everybody getting to watch Space Babies? Let me know in the comments. Did you watch it at midnight? Did you wait until this morning? Did you wait until the evening? I'm intrigued to know how people decided to watch it because we had so much choice. If you are new to Ups and Downs, it's very, very simple. Gonna go through the episode, give you my ups for the episode and my downs for the episode. So, without further ado, let's get straight into the ups and downs for Space Babies.
Yet again, push the button.
Okay, let's kick things off with a strong up. If you have been around for my previous ups and downs, you'll know that I had some issues with the title sequence, particularly the kind of PowerPoint presentation animation of the Doctor Who logo flying on screen. Fear not, they fixed it. It looks so much better, so much better. And they've also added another shot or edited one of the other shots, this kind of space sequence with rocks, and it looks beautiful. They've made improvements and I approve. Having said that, I do have a down. We didn't have a cold open. Cold opens are like a thing for Doctor Who. You have a little scene and then you have the opening titles, and it just felt a little bit odd to start with the opening title sequence and not kind of a little build-up with a cliffhanger of sorts to get us into the story. They can really help to kind of set the tone and the vibe of the episode and really hook the audience in. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it did kind of go, what's happened? But then we start the episode and immediately another up, Murray Gold. I think I up Murray Gold pretty much. I think I've given him an up for every single episode of the 60th and for the Christmas special. There's something to me that just Murray Gold is Doctor Who, and we're hit with his beautiful music immediately in the opening of the episode with Ruby entering the TARDIS, and it just stays strong consistently throughout the episode. Murray Gold is just synonymous with Doctor Who for me. And we even had a little callback to some of his previous score. When the Doctor mentions Gallifrey, we have a little motif of This Is Gallifrey, which was really predominant in Series 3, particularly in those episodes with the Master. So it was really nice to have that just little musical motif there. I comment on the music quite often, but I really, really love that. So as I mentioned, Ruby then enters the TARDIS, and it does bring me to another down. Obviously, in any new episode of Doctor Who, especially when you've got a new companion, there's always got to be this scene where the Doctor kind of introduces who they are, where they're from, and all the kind of doctoriness of it to the new companion. However, this particular scene felt very exposition heavy. It felt very much like this scene was for the benefit of the new viewers. And while I completely appreciate that we do need to maybe introduce new viewers to the structure of the show, it just felt a little bit obvious. And as an existing viewer, I almost felt like I was watching our recap video that we posted last week in anticipation of this. And I think the better way for them to have done that is to have posted something similar to what we did. I think they did do that, a recap, so that new viewers could watch that first. Usually those scenes do have those elements, just felt a little bit too much like, oh, I see what you're doing there. This is a scene for the newbies, is it? And we'll just sit here and wait, shall we? Because we already know all this. And in a similar vein to that scene, I'm not going to up it or down it. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. I wasn't sure how I felt about the Doctor's explanation for his name, the Doctor. He was adopted, and where he was adopted, they have titles, and there was a couple of name drops in there. We had the Rani mentioned, the Master. I personally think that the enjoyment comes out of the Doctor always kind of avoiding the question. When someone says, what's your name? It's like anyway, should we talk about this instead? And that was kind of missing, and it kind of took a more serious tone of, well, this is what they call me and this is why they call me it. And there wasn't really that kind of comical moment of, anyway, let's not ask those questions. So I don't know how I feel about it. I'm not sure. I don't know if I like it or not. So then Ruby has her first trip in the TARDIS, and we go back to see some dinosaurs. I do really like the dinosaurs. I think we mentioned that the very first trailer we saw, the lighting or something in that trailer hadn't been fixed or whatever. So it was nice to see the shot as it was intended to be seen here. The whole butterfly situation. Myself and Danny had this discussion, and my mum kind of brought it up as well. Does the Doctor suddenly have magical powers to bring squished butterflies back to life by breathing on them? You know, I know in the past, like, regeneration energy has been used to kind of heal things or grow back entire hands, but there was no regeneration energy in the situation. It was a little bit like, is this a new power that they have? But having said that, I did like the comedy of that scene, Ruby changing into this kind of butterfly being. It was funny, and that kind of, I'm glad we fixed that. We don't want that to happen. And there was a look on the Doctor's face as he stepped back into the TARDIS, almost as if he was like, what just happened there? And then another up, we had this beautiful transition of the TARDIS flying through the time vortex into the TARDIS landing on the space station. That was a really great shot. The only thing that I did question was, why did the TARDIS crash into the station almost like it did in Wild Blue Yonder, as opposed to materializing as we're used to seeing it do? And we saw it materialize later in the episode, so it's not like they've changed this completely. But in that one particular instance, it kind of flew into shot rather than materialized into shot. And I was like, have they changed how the TARDIS works? And then Ruby steps out of the TARDIS, and another great big whopping up for all the Trekkies out there. Not only did we get a Star Trek name drop, but did we just get confirmation that the Star Trek universe and the Whoniverse are one and the same? She said, is it like the matter transporter in Star Trek? And he says, we should go visit them sometime. My mind was blown. I couldn't believe it. Totally here for it. Also, did anyone else notice a little bit later on when we saw the original space station officers? Their uniforms were very Star Trek-like. We had a red one, we had a yellow one, we had a blue one. They were very Star Trek-esque, and I'm loving that RTD, who is a known Trekkie, is adding these little Star Trek hints into Doctor Who. I'm totally here for it. So next we're introduced to the Bogeyman, although at this point we don't know that it's the Bogeyman. I'm slightly indifferent about the Bogeyman. I don't really have strong feelings either way about the Bogeyman. To me, it's just another Doctor Who monster. And Danny has commented on how he thinks that we had lots of shaky cam shots of it. We never really saw it for long periods of time, and that kind of suggested that maybe the makeup or the costume wasn't as great, and so they were trying to hide that. I kind of thought, fear of the unknown, seeing less of it kind of made it more scary, and that was why I felt like we didn't see much of it. But yeah, I felt kind of, there's no up or down for it. It just is. It was just another Doctor Who monster to me. What I will say is I did enjoy the fact that I really was intrigued by the idea of the Doctor being confused at his own reaction to it, and being confused that he was scared, and questioning, why am I scared? That was very intriguing, and obviously we did get answers to that later on. So then we enter a room, and there's a load of really creepy babies in jars that gave me the full-on heebie-jeebies. They, in the jars, looked weird. That was kind of creepy. And then we had this really great kind of callback to RTD1, because he kind of, the Doctor sonics Ruby's phone so that she can call back home. And that's something that we saw happen a lot in Russell T Davies's first era. He does it to Rose's phone, does it to Martha's phone. I don't know that we really saw it happen once Russell T Davies left. I don't recall there being scenes for any of Stephen Moffat's Doctors, or in the Chibnall era, of the Doctor sonicking a phone to make it a super phone. It might have happened, I could be completely wrong, but it definitely is something that happened multiple times, series 1 to series 4. So that was really great. And then, up, we have a great Doctor speech. We love a good Doctor speech, and we have this lovely moment of the Doctor, I'm going to paraphrase slightly, but I don't have a people, I don't have a home, but I do have freedom. That entire speech is a really great Doctor speech. It's that kind of boost of adrenaline, that just feeling of, oh, this is the Doctor, you've got Murray Gold's music. And it was a really touching moment, and I really, really enjoyed that speech. And I think Ncuti Gatwa is just soaking up this role. He's so great as the Doctor. Such great casting. And then the Space Babies. I'm gonna be honest, the Space Babies get an up and a down. I really love the concept of the Space Babies. I love the idea of them. I love the backstory of why they're there, why they can speak, the fact that they've been abandoned, that they're being grown. I loved the idea of baby farms not being to grow food, but more to be, to fix problems with infertility, and that was really great. And I did really love that. And the babies themselves, they were really cute in their little pram things. And however, The CGI mouths is where the down comes in, because I see what they were trying to do there. It was distracting for me. Obviously, you can't have actual babies talking. I understand that. It was ambitious of them to try and use that, but I just kind of felt a little bit like... And also, I kind of felt like the voices didn't quite fit with the babies. I don't know, something about that didn't really help. And what also took me out of it a couple of times, and look, I know, babies are babies. They can't act, they can't be directed. I completely get it, don't come for me. But I felt like there were moments where the facial expressions of the actual babies didn't match what the voices were saying, or in other moments, the way that the Doctor and Ruby were reacting to the babies didn't match what the babies were actually doing. So there was a moment where Ruby was comforting the baby like, shush, 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 it's okay, but the baby wasn't crying. The baby was just like... I'm not trying to say let's make all the babies cry, but if a baby needs to be crying, the baby needs to be crying. Because you're just kind of trying to calm the baby when it's already calm, it doesn't really work. And I think a few times it took me out because, yeah, the real babies didn't match what the voices of the babies were saying that they felt. You know, there was moments where the babies were all crying, like you could hear them going, ah, but the babies weren't crying. And it was a bit odd to me. So up and down for those, I'm afraid. It was ambitious. I don't think it worked entirely as well as they hoped it would, but I liked the concept of them. What I will say though, the design of that room in the ship, the combination of like kids' toys, babies' toys, mixed in with the technological stuff, all the technology and the spacey stuff, that was brilliant. I really liked that. It was this kind of like Home Alone vibe happening where you just like make devices out of toys and the things that you have to hand. I loved the details of all the kids' drawings on the walls, because all kids draw on walls. Why do all kids draw on walls? Also, another up, I really loved that they thought that the Doctor and Ruby were their mummy and daddy. That was hilarious. The reactions from Ruby and the Doctor when they were like, actually, hang on a second, backtrack a little bit. What now? It also gave me these vibes. There was a bit where one of the babies went, Daddy, and even though it was Daddy, not Mummy, it made me think of, are you my mummy? And then I was like, oh God, are these going to turn out to be evil babies? But yeah, that whole dynamic of them thinking that they're going to be their mummy and daddy, and the Doctor and Ruby being like, oh, hang on a minute. That was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. Also in this scene with the babies, there's clearly a lot of setup happening for the greater theme of this series, particularly surrounding Ruby. There's a lot of discussion about adoption, about not knowing who your parents are, about kind of found family. There are quite a few scenes of that. Maybe to some degree, I feel like maybe there was one too many scenes of that discussion happening. This was quite a long scene that I feel like maybe could have been slightly shorter. But overall, you can see them kind of building on this theme and really incorporating that into the plots of these episodes. Another up I have is there's a lot of humour in this episode. I mean, there are dark moments as well, and I'll get onto those in a second, but there's a lot of great humour in this episode. Even in this scene, you know, for example, you know, the Doctor's having this real deep speech, deep talk with one of the babies and ends it with, I'm absolutely lovely, aren't I? And the baby just yawns in his face. And I was like, that's hilarious. That's so funny. And also, maybe I'm a bad person, but the Doctor purposely scaring all the babies by shouting bogeyman, and then all the babies start crying, and I'm fairly certain he was laughing. That was hilarious as well. There's a lot of great funny moments in this episode, a lot of good humour. Having said that, another up, there are some major tone shifts in this episode that work so well. So you've got this more kind of comical moment with the space babies. Then you've got the scene with the flashback to the church on Ruby Road. That, I think, is one of the best scenes in the whole episode. It was amazing, that cut where Ruby just disappeared out of shot, and then you've got the hooded figure turning and pointing at the Doctor. The emotion on Ncuti's face was amazing. He's such a good actor. It also kind of plays into the wider questions of the whole season, as we've said with the adoption storyline. It also plays into that theory we've had about memories, especially when he says that the memory has changed. And I think we're going to revisit that definitely. Something to do with memories is vital to this season. And it seems that that's already being set up even in episode 1. So then we meet Jocelyn. I'll be honest, a bit like the bogeyman, I was a little indifferent towards Jocelyn. Obviously we do learn kind of a little bit more about what's going on, about the fate of these babies and the situation, and again there's a very big shift in tone here and it becomes quite dark when we kind of learn what the fate of these babies might be. But yeah, in terms of Jocelyn herself, slightly indifferent. neither loved her nor hated her. She just kind of was. I will say it was quite nice, though, to find out that she wasn't some evil mastermind that was kind of growing babies to feed the bogeyman, because that was one of the theories we had when we learned that she was going to be in this episode and we saw the first images of her released. I was a little bit concerned that she was going to be growing babies to feed the monster, which would have been bad. So I'm glad that they changed that storyline around, or at least proved our theory wrong in that regard. I have another down. Down. I have commented in great detail about my dislike for this new Sonic. Now, I know that the Sonic has been used in various capacities in the past and probably has been used for this very purpose before. However, I do not like the USB Sonic. It just felt too silly for me. I'm pretty sure the Sonic's been used in this way before, but this design of it, plus it being used as this weird USB, no, you've lost me. You've lost me. Bring back a traditional Sonic screwdriver, please. What is this monstrosity? But we'll save it with a major up. Susan Twist cameo. I'm not sure if we knew that she was going to be in this episode. I think we knew from the cast list that she was going to be in The Devil's Cord, but I'm fairly certain that she wasn't included in the cast list for this episode, and yet there she is. Did anyone else miss it the first time? Because I was so busy writing down that the uniforms looked like Star Trek uniforms that I totally missed her. Totally missed her. Until Danny said, "Did you see Susan Twist?" And I went, "What? Where?" Susan Twist! Okay, moving on, another up. I love the nanny filter. I find that things like this are really reminiscent of like what Doctor Who is, you know, that kind of adult humour that kids won't understand. That's Doctor Who. That's what makes it so enjoyable for the whole family, moments like that. And I thought it worked really, really well. I think it brought some great humour. I said previously one of my ups was so much humour in this episode, and that was one of the elements of that humour that I really, really enjoyed, and found myself laughing out loud at the use of the nanny filter. So that was a great inclusion. I really enjoyed that.
I told you these systems are a crock of waste products.
Mind your language, Nanny.
Okay, so then another up, we have Space Baby Eric deciding that he's gonna be brave and go and defeat the bogeyman, which was very cute with his little wooden sword. And then the realization from Ruby that she encouraged him to do that, and she runs to save Eric and face the bogeyman. And this really felt like a defining moment for Ruby, almost the moment where she kind of proves herself as a worthy companion for the Doctor, that she's willing to run into the face of danger to save this child, to save this baby. And it really felt like this was the defining moment where the Doctor went, "You can stay, you can come with me, I'm going to give you a key later." Spoiler alert. Also in that moment, what I found very, very funny, again, the humour, was the Doctor said when they were trying to find Eric and hide from the bogeyman, he said, what did he say? I'm going to find the exact quote. "If I was very, very little and I knew the bogeyman was coming, I would need to change my nappy." I mean, they literally sniffed out the baby through their dirty nappy. That's hilarious. And then, of course, the babies come and save the day, taken up for babies with a flamethrower. That seems safe. I mean, I think maybe I'd rather they were drawing on the walls with the crayons than literally having a flamethrower, but I thought it was funny. So obviously there's a little bit more of a techno-babbly explanation for this situation, but the concept of a child's story becoming reality in this episode plays into that greater change that Doctor Who is seeing, where things that were impossible or fantasy becoming reality. And I liked that we were starting to see that happening even here. Even if there was a little bit more of a techno-babbly, sciencey explanation, the machine created both, it does play into that wider theme of fantasy becoming reality that we haven't previously had in Doctor Who. And while we're on the topic of the bogeyman, the bogeyman taken up. The bogeyman is made of bogies. That's hilarious. And while we're on the topic of the bogeyman being made of bogies, take another up. The chemistry between Millie and Ncuti, and by extension Ruby and the Doctor, is golden. They have got some great chemistry. There are a lot of moments in this episode where there's some great banter between them, and you can just see that they've got those great lines of humour, and one of the greatest examples of this is when they discover that the bogeyman is made of bogies, and the Doctor literally spends a good 2 minutes just laughing at Ruby because she's covered in snot and bogies. I was literally nearly bent over laughing at that scene. That was hilarious. I really enjoyed that. Again, there's so many shifts in tone in this episode, and I think that works so well. So then we have Jocelyn directing the Doctor and Ruby down all the corridors to escape the bogeyman, which then leads me to another situation, which is an up and a down, which is the whole spacing the bogeyman situation. Now, on the one hand, the up part, I like that we've kind of returned to this idea or this philosophy that the Doctor has where the Doctor does no harm, the Doctor doesn't kill. And so in that regard, I really liked that we stuck with that and the Doctor doesn't want to kill this monster or this bogeyman or whatever it is. On the other hand, more of a down, I'm not sure how I felt about the kind of relating to the bogeyman as the only one of its kind and the Doctor being the only one of his kind. It felt very, very similar to the beast below, but in that situation, you felt a deeper connection to the beast. You'd had more time to connect with this character, to build an emotional connection to the character, whereas this episode, we've basically been running from the bogeyman. We've been fearing the bogeyman. The Doctor has been fearing the bogeyman for this whole episode, and then all of a sudden, he feels connected to it. And I feel like we could have done with another scene or a couple of scenes where we saw the bogeyman's vulnerability a little bit so that we felt more connected to the character, because I quite honestly didn't actually mind if it was spaced. You know, I was kind of like, yeah, and the bogeyman is gone. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, but we want to save the bogeyman. I was like, do we? I've not seen any scene in this episode that gives me reason to feel connected emotionally to the bogeyman. It's been chasing people and making and scaring people. So it was a bit odd. It was like, yes, I really like that we've gone back to that philosophy of the Doctor doesn't kill. But at the same time, I think we've maybe gone a little bit too far by suggesting that the Doctor relates to the bogeyman as the last of its kind or the only one of its kind. And then with the flashbacks as well, it just felt a little bit OTT. So then the Doctor has his hero moment, he saves the bogeyman, and everyone lives happily ever after. And then we have a moment that seems a little bit of like a parallel to Rose. You know when Rose found out that it was a time machine and then, you know, instantly she was like she wants to go and save her dad? And it's like the Doctor anticipated this in Ruby by immediately going, look, there's one place I'm not going to take you. I'm not going to take you back to the church on Ruby Road. In either an up or a down, it was just kind of, oh, there we go. And then we return home to see Carla and Cherry. So let's have another whopping up. Cherry Sunday has one line in this whole episode, and it's a great line. The TARDIS crashes in the kitchen, she goes, what the blinking Philip? And she's got her cup of tea. I do also wonder if we're going to have this kind of running joke or this running theme that the Doctor always kind of destroys Carla's flat when he lands the TARDIS, or whenever he's around, he ends up destroying their flat in some way. And I would kind of enjoy that. I like those kind of running gags and running jokes, and it seems like that seems to be what's happening here. So, yeah, I hope that continues. Although maybe not for Carla. That's not so great. It's just like, you just ruined the ceiling, and now you've crashed the TARDIS and ruined the ceiling in there as well. And then we end the episode on yet more mystery surrounding Ruby Sunday. So we have the Doctor scanning Ruby. We have a DNA scan going on. Did anyone else think of the scanning that the 11th Doctor did of Amy when she said she was pregnant and then she said she wasn't pregnant, and then there was that scan going on that couldn't work out whether she was or wasn't? That's what it reminded me of. But of course, with that just intrigues us more about who is Ruby Sunday. And did anybody else notice that final shot in the TARDIS, it was snowing? I totally missed that the first time, but it was definitely snowing. We went back and checked. What does it all mean? Overall, I think it was a good episode. There were great moments within it, but I don't think it will be my number one episode of season 1 for sure. I do question why they chose this as their opening episode. I think it was a bold move to use this as their opening episode, especially if they are trying to appeal to a new audience. I don't feel like it was necessarily the strongest episode. It was slightly odd, especially with the kind of CGI babiness, and I'm intrigued to see whether it has has the effect they want it to, or whether it's going to have ultimately been a bad decision. We will have an Easter egg video coming out for this episode. We will also have a discussion video coming out later in the week, which will be about this episode and the Devil's Cord. And tomorrow, keep your eyes peeled because the ups and downs for the Devil's Cord will be up as well. There is so much going on. In the meantime, everybody, I've been Ellie for WhoCulture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.